Welcome back to a very special episode of Direct Edition. I'm your host, Dave, the guy that doesn't eat Twinkies. Tell him about the Twinkie. And today's episode is actually a milestone for me. I am finally sitting down to have a chat with my buddy, Kevin Devine. If you don't know Kevin, he is a successful indie musician who has over 16 albums to his credit, including 10 either solo or with his band, The Goddamn Band, or his indie supergroup with members of Manchester Orchestra, Andy Hull and Rob McDowell, called Bad Books, or his beginnings as a punk emo kid in Staten Island, Brooklyn, with his Mets-themed tribute band, Miracle of 86, even though they didn't sing about the Mets. I met Kevin over a decade ago at either an in-store on Long Island or a benefit show in New York City at Housing Works. And I would go see him very frequently in New York and New Jersey, and we'd always chat whenever I saw him. And then in 2014, I got sober, but he'd actually helped me and shared some really kind words and helped me by sharing his experience with sobriety. And then later on that year, to back his Kickstarter for Bubblegum and Bulldozer, he played a show at my apartment. And we've been good friends, a lot of mutual friends, and we've always had a fun time talking or hanging out. And when I asked him to come on the podcast, he didn't even let me finish the sentence. He said yes. So we sat down for about an hour and 20 minutes this week. This is the first person that I've had on the podcast that is a friend of mine. We did not get to too many questions, but that's the great thing. This is more of just a chat and a very branching off chat. We talk about Guns N' Roses, our first musical love, because we are very close in age, into the Seattle scene. Lots of talk about Cobain and Pearl Jam, and Kevin shares a story about his experience playing the Ohana Fest, which is an Eddie Vedder curated fest. And we just kind of talk about a lot of different things, including geekdom and the parallels between sports and music and wrestling. Kevin Smith. This is probably going to be this interview will hopefully lead to more chats with him because we are both of the same mind. And I love talking to Kevin. Not only love listening to his music, but usually when he speaks, he always has something to say that maybe either be completely wildly ridiculous or extremely thoughtful. The other thing that we do speak about is he has a podcast called Give It a Chance, which is on the iHeartRadio network, where him and fellow Staten Islander and comedian Casey Jost talk about songs that are wildly popular, but maybe they dissect them, and then the conversation goes a little bit deeper as to why people may like or not like these songs, as well as Kevin's Patreon, where you can find him most of the time either playing a live show every month, recording covers, reimagining songs, or sharing song ideas that he has that might be for his next album. Kevin is one of my favorite people on the face of this planet, and I am delighted to share with you my chat with Kevin Devine, a.k.a. Papa Kev. Welcome to Direct Edition, and I'm here with our weekly guest of I Was a Teenage Terrorist with former IRA bomber and Strom Thurmond assistant turned singer-songwriter who once claimed that Bob Dylan ain't got shit on me. Kevin Devine, how you doing?
3 for 3. Every one of those things. True as the day is long.
You're 92 years old.
And a noted racist.
Yes.
Big time bigot.
Big time bigot sounds like a really interesting Broadway play.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, lots of things. I also feel like I feel like, have I ever told you, this won't be long, but I actually have a real story about, I have a storage space in Brooklyn where I live. You need a passcode, a key code to get in it and whatever. And so one day I was going to do something, and I've had this place for too long. In fact, I've probably sunk a college tuition's worth of money into the existence of this place, which is a whole other podcast for another time. But I went in and I was doing two things at once, something in my head, and I forgot. I typed the wrong code. And so then I go correct it, and I get in, and they over the speaker in this, like, it's a Stop and Store. It's a giant multi-level, there's this voice that's like, would the owner of 2279 please come to the office? Would the or whatever they say, not owner, you don't own shit, but the guy who rents 2279. So I go there, and it's like an ex-cop security guy, and he's like, noticed you put the wrong code in. What was up with that? And I was like, oh, I was just moving too fast. I wasn't thinking. And the guy was like, well, it's a little bit of a problem for us when people putting the wrong code in. How do we know that you're actually supposed to have access to that? And I said, oh, well, this has been my room since 2010. And the guy was like, well, we don't know if you're not could potentially be part of a criminal element. And I was like, what do you mean? And the guy was like, you could be a terrorist. And I was like, for what, the IRA? And given my presentation, not that there can't be people, whatever, but he was like, I don't know, could be. And I was like, oh, you're one of these guys. Like, you can't blink. I get it. Yeah. So anyway, at least according to one security guard in Sunset Park, I am a potential IRA member. And now you've verified that on the radio. And as we know, anything you hear on any medium must be true.
It's not only true, but the FBI actually, I send this directly to them after I'm done recording. That's why I'm currently on every list known to man.
That's the only reason? Wexy?
No,
come on.
Definitely not the only reason.
Who are we kidding? Guy like you?
Yeah. You never know when I'm going to just pop up and terrorize
this
people.
This is really, actually, we should probably pull away at this point.
Yeah, because I might say something that really gets me.
Yeah, you are actually on a list. I like that but people should know, you send your podcast directly to the FBI. I send mine directly to FUBU, for us, by us. And that's just one of the three differences between us, between you and I. That's one of only three.
And I was surprised to hear one of your sponsors on your new podcast is Snap-on bracelets. It was very strange because that really does, kind of line up with FUBU. No Fear is also a
No Fear. I definitely had a No Fear T-shirt in the 8th grade, probably more than one, probably two.
Yeah, I had multiples.
Yeah, but honestly, this is maybe a bad thing to admit. If you told me you could say anything as a sponsor for the show, and I would have for the podcast with Casey, and I would have no idea if you were messing with me or not. Like, I'm shocked. I this is bad to admit, I suppose, as a podcast host at this point, but I speed through I always fast forward the advertisements.
Me too.
Yeah, I do it when I'm watching things. I do it when I'm listening to things. It's a way to try to protect some remaining free space in my mind. And so I don't even know who sponsors our show. You could tell me it was sponsored by Al Qaeda, and I'll be like, oh, I guess that's what iHeartRadio does. I don't know.
That was actually my first choice for Terrorist of the Week introduction for you, was Al Qaeda.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because I was going to call it, I was a teenage jihadist.
Yeah, well, listen, I could tell you a few things that I won't, that are not about my jihadi activity. But Strandberg will say things sometimes like this. He'll go, I've read some interesting doctrines recently by one Albert Qaeda. Anyway, if you're still listening, thank you.
His Apex Incel Instagram is definitely on a watch list or two.
If you have not, and the odds are you have not, because he has like 110 followers or something, which to me is criminal. Like that thing. Also, I kind of like have a mixed minds relationship to anything like this, which might come up in the conversation we have about music. I sort of like want everybody to know what Mike does, and also like don't want anybody to know what Mike does. Not because I want Mike, if it made like I don't know, if it made him money a little bit to like make life a little smoother around the edges, I'd be stoked about that. And I think he's genuinely like brilliant and crazy and hysterical. But I also think that stuff is like so bracing.
It is. Like that's the type of account that breaks families apart, like uncles and grandpas and cousins and stuff.
No doubt. We in fact showed it once to a tour mate, not in
No.
our world.
Hmm.
So, and it's a great litmus test because some people you show and they are all the way in
Yeah.
immediately, and some people you show and they are like, we showed this one person and they were like, why? And I was like, I get it. I totally get it. And also like, why not?
Why not? Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, but if you're listeners, watchers, whatever's the watcher, Uatu, there is at Apex Incel on Instagram is well worth your time. I will stand by that. I will sponsor that. I sponsor that
it too.
Yeah.
Look, that account can exist because technically we are in the end game. It's a slow end game, but we are in the end game. And
we're definitely, it definitely feels like we're in some kind of end game of something.
Yes.
Whether it's a particular way of doing things or whether it's the big shebang, more will be revealed. But yeah.
all right. So we're going to definitely need to do part 2, 3, and 4 because if you see my notes for this,
oh my God, I'll shut up we'll go. And also, I love that you named Unsaye.
You did that. That's on your StreamYard.
Yeah, but that's my StreamYard.
Yeah,
I didn't even know I'd ever even used StreamYard before. So I thought you did that. So Unsaye, just before we really get into Dave's notes, is just some idiotic thing I sing to myself, like one of many things moving around the world, and it's like, and I sing it to my kid, and I sing it, but it's just like Unsaye, Unsayither, Unsaye, Wawakwither.
It's almost like it always felt like it's half vocal lessons, but half like if you saw the inside of my brain, these fully fledged lyrics would be a 6-minute song. You're only hearing 20 seconds of it.
You understand.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why, I think one of the reasons why I always wanted to talk to you in this kind of way, but now I have this avenue to, is we're a month and 7 days apart in age.
Right.
You're December 19th, I think, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm November 12th. And like all of our pop culture influences, everything that we were digesting lines up to be the exact same thing.
Yes.
Like we hit this age and we're watching this portion of MTV and this album comes out on our 13th birthday or whatever. So whatever's wrong in this head is very similar to whatever's wrong in that head. And I've always found like your sense of humor is like whatever non-filtration device that's I don't have in my brain.
Yes.
I feel like you have that same non-filtration device.
Yeah, that's for better and for worse, and I think it's definitely both, depending on who you're talking to and what you're talking about. In this instance, it's all green lights all the way, but
there's no red lights here. We're not playing the Roxanne
Did my Wi-Fi
game.
do something specious? All right, good.
Yeah.
Sorry, is my Wi-Fi being funny?
Just for a second.
We back? All right, cool.
Yeah.
If you need me to shut my camera off, I could do that too.
No, you're good. And plus, it records locally,
Okay.
so I'll be able to grab what's on your feed and download.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
But yeah, it's all green lights. We don't put up the red light here.
No, let's find out exactly how dark that is. But yeah. Maybe we should. We'll find out together. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe when we get into the 1986 Mets and we realize we did as much drugs as they did, maybe we'll veer off that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, that could maybe. God, I was literally just watching footage of Dwight Gooden in 1985. It's like watching it's like watching a like Secretariat or something, like some kind of it's just like watching he happens to be a human being, but like this person in the context of other people. That's the best people at the thing those people do on earth. And he is like just naturally making everyone around him look like they're like 14 years old. and he's like, or like they're like toddlers or something.
Yeah.
And you're watching these people whose whole lives have been like the perfection of this ability, just with it's part frustration, and then it's part almost like just complete acceptance. It's almost like, Thanos, or so, like it has come, they're just like, all right, I can't do anything about this. I've tried. I've done the best I could. It is really Greek level tragedy what happens to him, more than Strawberry to me, more than, because the Gooden thing, Strawberry still like had it in spurts for a long time.
Yeah, past the 86 and 87.
Yeah, I feel like Gooden by 86, even in 86, he like wasn't the same guy anymore, and he was like fucking 21 or something like that, 22. And by 87, he's like in rehab, missing half the year. It's like the Tyson Strawberry Gooden triangle in that time frame is it's Shakespeare, like what happens with those three dudes. It's really wild.
And who would have thought that Tyson would be the guy that like actually has this redemptive arc where like he kind of took his life and looked at it from stepping outside himself and made a success out of that.
Yeah.
And he laughed at himself too, but
he
was a personality also.
Yes, 100%. And Gooden, it seems like of the three, is the one who, I don't know if he fully, it seems like he still doesn't even necessarily accept that he like has a problem with drugs. Like he says all this stuff, but then you're kind of like, you're sweating profusely.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you might still be, you know what I mean? Like it's really deep. I don't know. I shouldn't say this. It's like I'm not slandering Dwight Gooden.
No, you're not far off. I worked with him a bit before I left New York, and he's just a little. He couldn't depend on him to be on time for anything, or
hard. Yes.
Yeah, but
superheroes. When we were. Like they were like they could have been the Avengers or something. Like them, the WWF, the '86 Mets, the WWF, and the
comics. Bash Brothers. And the Bash Brothers.
The Bash Brothers were like, that was like, the Hulk and the Thing or something. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. There's always the parallel, and obviously in my comic book world, the parallels between wrestling and comics are undeniable. And there is a portion of that in music, and like that kind of will tie into maybe the first thing I want to talk about.
Sure.
Like Guns N' Roses, our first love.
Superheroes as well when I was 8, for sure.
Right. And like they each had their own identity, and they had their superpower on the team, but like I think showmanship in general is something that we grew up a lot around that in music and sports entertainment world. But what do you remember anything about like your first reactions listening to Appetite? Because I know.
100%. I mean, it's one of. I don't know how many. I don't know how many. I could very quickly. I definitely know. I remember for sure where I was the first time I heard Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, Sunny Day Real Estate.
Oh wow.
Pavement. Elliott Smith. There's like first times that I'm like, I acutely remember. I mean, then there's other ones that like aren't Sunny. It's funny. I could speak about all of that, and maybe we'll get back into that. But I remember those were real. That was all, but between like ages 7 and 15. Elliott was a little later than that, 17 or 18. But formative, layers of formative. Guns N' Roses, I was at my cousin, my mom's sister's family in Earlysville, Virginia, outside Charlottesville. My cousin Sean was a little older than me. He was he was probably 17. And I thought he was like the coolest person in the world. He's still great, but I thought at that time he was like, he was another superhero. He's like, had like, he played the bass guitar. He had like Dio blacklight posters on his wall. You know what I mean? He was like, and he was like, I played lacrosse. He was like, he did all this stuff that I was like, whoa. And we were in his room. He was humoring me as he was good at doing when we were kids. And I remember they played Sweet Child of Mine on his, like the Charlottesville rock station or Top 40. I don't remember. It was one of them. It was the summer of '88. And I remember being like, I so vividly remember hearing the opening guitar thing, and like I was sitting on his bed and I just sat there and listened to the whole song. And then at the end I asked him, do they play it again? And he was like, they will in like 2 hours if you want to wait. And then I got him to like I think that's when I got like I remember buying the Appetite cassette.
Mm-hmm.
And I was definitely getting into MTV, but that was the entry point. And I do really remember being like, I had music was all around, family, older siblings. My mom was a big music person, but that was the first thing I remember being like, oh, I got to tell people about this.
Right. Like,
you know
that's
what I mean?
your music.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then the Appetite thing, it's funny. You're totally right. Music, sports, entertainment, comics, sports, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, also bands were like gangs,
Mm-hmm.
which was also like kind of like superhero teams,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like they were kind of like the Avengers, the X-Men. And like, they even like made, I had a Guns N' Roses comic book.
They have a couple different ones, the personality comics.
Yes, and I remember getting that as I was getting into them while I was also reading comics, Marvel, DC, whatever.
Yeah.
And they looked like, you know, they had like crazy tattoos and outfits, and Slash had snakes around and all this hair, and all the videos they're like doing this now in retrospect, like cartoonishly bad stuff. But at the time, you're 8. You're like, oh my God, these guys are really bad, you know? But also like seeing them in the context of like Debbie Gibson and Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. Like I was even like Poison.
I was they made Poison look like a boy band.
Which is, of course, then the irony is that the Nirvana thing does the same exact thing to them, where you're like, oh, well, wait a minute. Like, that guy's not playing piano with Elton John dressed in like a sort of weird marching band outfit and wearing spandex shorts. And that guy's just kind of like, he looks like anybody.
Yeah, he's wearing a sweater and ripped jeans.
Yeah, and their band's like, and they're like breaking everything, and you know, whatever. Like, and of course, showmanship is involved in anti-showmanship too. Yeah. Anti-fashion is a fashion too. But when you're 11 or 12, these things are like massive gulfs. Yeah, like it was like, oh, like Guns N' Roses hung around for me still for a while. I was stubborn with them, but it is. The stereotypically true thing that the Nirvana thing really did, like I was like, oh, I can't really listen to Poison anymore. I can't really listen to like Motley Crue anymore. Like that's bullshit. You know, even when you're 12, you were aware oh, that's not.
You spoke about it recently on the podcast. Oh, are you there?
I spoke about it on the podcast.
You spoke about it on the podcast
on my phone too.
About how like, you know, you were expected to not. And I want to talk about that, but you're expected to like not claim you like these bands anymore when the new cool, you know, final self-identification music comes along. But yeah, I still listen to Use Your Illusion 2 like it came out yesterday, because something about that album was so far out of the realm of every single band in the hair metal, hair rock thing, because they were like, yeah, let's do a couple of 7 or 8 minute or 11-minute songs. Let's throw 3 guitar solos in there. And I think, to me, it's where Axl actually grew as a lyricist in some ways. Like, well, if he wrote the lyrics to Estranged, not that Get in the Ring is a really hard song to write.
But, no, I think it's funny. I haven't listened to those records all the way through, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, in a long time. I do think in retrospect, it was certainly very ambitious. They weren't like, he wasn't trying to recreate the thing that was already like, you know, the success of Appetite for Destruction was like, obviously it's like is it the highest selling debut album in the history of recorded music or something?
I think it might be.
Can't get bigger than that for your first record. So like, it would have been really easy to just be like, I don't know if it would have been easy to do, but to try to be like, well, let's just do that again. And to his, I guess we'll say credit, to his credit, he was hungry enough and also like insecure enough and also insane. Fragile enough and also and also egotistical enough. All those things are really just different words for the same word. But to be like, no, I'm going to be the band, the guy that was, think the thing that happened with Axl was that he kind of forgot he was in a band.
Yeah, he thought it was just him.
Yeah, but to be like, I'm going to be the person who was central to the success of this thing, and I'm also going to be John Lennon and Paul McCartney and Freddie Mercury. They're coming to take me away right now. And like the punk bands that I sort of liked, and Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones. Like, I'm all of it. And what's so funny about ego, hubris, fragility, all of that, is that in a different way, I think the reason Kurt Cobain and Axl Rose hated each other so much was because there were weird ways in which they were like mirrors. They were people who, they were kind of like, I'm going to use a pejorative term on purpose. They were like white trash.
Yeah.
But they were dudes who were drawn to like a sort of anti-authoritarian thing. They were dudes who were drawn to some different music, but some of the same music. They were definitely like getting beat up, picked on, whatever, by like jock kids, cop kids, whatever. And then they all, but I think a difference maybe between them was that some of how that got internalized in each of them. I think Kurt finding punk music and finding punk music in the area of the world he was in, as things like Riot Girl are happening and Fugazi's happening on the East Coast, that brought him in a little bit more of a like sensitive about the world, less, not only sensitive about how I feel. Whereas Axl kind of prioritized, it was like, I don't mess with me, motherfucker. You know what I mean?
I'm a tough guy.
Yeah, and I think Kurt's thing was a little bit more like that's, and then there was a real like misogyny in Axl's whole thing that was not present in Nirvana's whole thing. But that's all just to say there was a lot that was similar. And I think what's funny with the Kurt thing is, while Axl's saying I'm going to be all those things, I think Kurt's thing was like, I'm going to become, I will try to be Fugazi, but if Fugazi was competing with Michael Jackson and Guns N' Roses, and that is its own egotistical, hubristic adventure, Don Quixote thing to be on, like, so I think they did both. They didn't suffer for that kind of like, that fragility that also is like wrapped up in the hubris. And anyway,
And you know, they did hate each other, but at the same time, you know, I'm sure a lot of that was also like, kind of like a WWF situation. It's like, we do it for the headlines because, you know, he's going to say stuff about me. I gotta say something back. And Kurt, non-confrontational, but was under the table was confrontational.
Oh yeah. And I think that's true. Probably until you get to the point where it starts to be about like the kid and them being junkies and all the rest of that stuff. I think when it got there, I think Axl Rose was genuinely really like wounded that they were like so ardently, because before that happened, you know, he was so invested. He was like, this is the best thing I've heard in a really long time. And I think for that band to be like, not only do we not want to play with you, we actually think you are like the antithesis of anything that we think is cool. I'm sure that fucking hurt his feelings pretty profoundly. And as we know, when Axl's feelings are hurt,
things get
messy. Look, I think it would be like, it certainly would be a lie about my own march through music to say that like those records were not insane. Look, every bit as formative as any other cooler. And also like Guns N' Roses now, I don't even know if they're not cool. I actually think it's like it's plenty cool to like Guns N' Roses.
I think it is. I think it is.
You know, but certainly feel like you can't. I think you can think all the things that are fair to think about him.
Sure.
And also acknowledge like, that record is like pretty undeniable. And I bet I trust you about, I'm sure if you took like, if I listened to Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 right now, I would know every air drum fill, every air guitar lick, every fucking lyric. And I'm sure if you, to me, it's like, if I took the best 12 songs from those two records and made Use Your Illusion from it, I bet that record's probably just as good as Appetite for Destruction. Yeah, I don't know. Or very close to it. But anyway, I will say one little quick thing. You just led me to a realization that I don't think I have fully made before. They are the beginning of a weird trend in my life that is not contrarian, it's genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Some fucking weird reason, I tend to like the thing, like, all right, Sunny Day.
Yeah.
My favorite Sunny Day record is the Pink album. I just think it's
Not
the cool,
Diary.
No, the Diary's undoubtedly, like, it's, I get it. It's the record, and
Yeah.
I get why, and I love it. But the Pink album's like, it's so cool. It's the weirdest music to me. And it's also beautiful, and it's like, it seems almost unfinished. And there's this thing in me where I do have this tendency to kind of like gravitate towards that thing in somebody's body of work. And I actually weirdly think like the record that got me into Guns N' Roses even more than Appetite was Lies.
Lies, yes. That split live and then the acoustic.
Which in a weird way also speaks to like multiple sides of my brain.
Well,
but I
that's
remember,
right.
yeah, like I remember being like, this is weirdly beautiful. Like Patience is like beautiful.
Yes.
And then like there's like Reckless Life or whatever is on that, and I remember being like, wow, this is so, it's messy. You know what I mean?
It is a mess because it's covers and it's originals.
Yes.
It comes on the heels of Appetite, and like I'm sure that turned at the time a lot of fucking people off.
So
Sure.
I bet you're right. And I don't mean to suggest when I say that I think it's a better record than Appetite for Destruction. It's like the difference between, I understand that Diary is, I guess, a better record.
Seminal
than yeah. But there's something about when they play those songs, I'm like, this is like they were tuned into something. And it also was like it was so weird they couldn't even fucking finish what they were trying to do. They were like, no. I don't really know. Okay, this will just come out, And when I hear it now, I'm like, God damn, those are the coolest songs that band ever wrote.
I used to love her. You're one in a million. Also being very controversial, but I understand what he was doing with it. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of my stance on Pearl Jam. I mean, 10 is amazing, Versus is great, but No Code, their fifth album, great. Is a masterpiece.
No Code's great. I'm with you on that. I think, and I think like even, it's funny, like Vitology, we listened to that on a tour last year in the van. I hadn't listened to it in so long. And I was like, wow, this is super weird. Like I like, whether I love it all the way through or not is immaterial. I'm like, credit where credit's due. Like, this is a genuinely fucking bizarre album. Yeah.
Hell.
And plus, Tremor Christ is like the weird midpoint between like Soundgarden and Fugazi. Like there's there's Beatles shit in that song. I'm like, wow, this is cool. Anyway, yeah.
But that, I mean, I have this conversation a lot with people our age in that
and with children. You have a lot of conversations with young children, which we should talk about on the pod.
I typically roll up on a high school on usually a Thursday.
I thought it was a grade school.
Yeah, no. I've switched to high school, but I do the kind of like say anything John Cusack. I hold up a boombox and says, but I have a sign that says, don't learn about history. Let's talk about music, young children.
Wow, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Pithy. Yeah. Did you know that Say Anything, the original film, was supposed to have John Travolta in it? No. Just joking. All right, so
wait. Was that like, was it John Travolta bald? Was it John Travolta with hair? Was it Nadal Dazeem's?
It was Nadal. It was Zinel Dazeem. Sorry.
Okay. See, now you're going to get me on a tangent because on the new episode of Give It a Chance, your podcast with Casey Jost, where you guys take apart a very popular song that people hate or tend to hate, and Butterfly was the newest episode.
Oh man,
which is Shifty Shell Shock. What the fuck's the name of that band?
Oh my God, what are they called? You're my butterfly, sugar baby, Crazy Town.
Crazy Town. You guys talk about the
rest in peace. Shifty.
Yes, rest in peace.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
But you guys touched on Fred Durst, not touched him, but you touched upon him and
the hem of his garment. Yeah.
He was an aspiring director. Once upon a time, he directed a movie with Jesse Eisenberg before he got famous. He did a movie a couple years back with John Travolta.
I was going to say, yes. Right? What was that called?
Oh fuck! It was like not The Fan. It was something about like an
The Fan is
obsessive
that Robert De Niro, Wesley
and Wesley
Snipes movie.
Snipes.
Oh
Yeah,
my
where he's
God.
clearly playing Barry Bonds.
It's so
Um,
good. So
but
good.
it's something like that. But John Travolta plays a. I think they try to make him autistic, but unfortunately, he comes off like a parody of an
Oh,
autistic
yeah. I was
person.
going to say that sounds dicey.
I won't even go. We could talk. I won't mention any other terminology that but the
Yeah.
first line of that movie is like, I think I pooped my pants.
But and it's John saying that?
Yes.
Oh boy.
So
Oh
John
boy.
Travolta, Academy Award winner, I believe. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And made a
I
movie
think
with
so.
Fred Durst that I pooped my pants. Anyway,
Jesus
where were
Christ.
we?
Oh, I would with just quickly on the Chansey thing. Two things about that. One thing is like I feel like, and I'm sure you know about this too. Like in the attempt to try to neatly and concisely convey the spirit of the show for like I guess the trying to get people to hear it, marketing. Like I actually think it's like, to me, you can't say that these are it's in all the literature about the show, so
Sure.
I just find myself saying this over and over again. I was like, I assented to it being in the literature, and I'm still like, every time I talk about it, I'm like, well, it's easier to just say that. I'm like, you can't call a song hated when like millions of people bought it, when it was like
Sure.
a top 10 single, and every song we do is enormously successful.
Sure.
I think what's funny about it, but it's also not like, but people in Williamsburg think this song is stupid. I think it's like something in the middle. It's like they're these incredibly, almost like they're in the canon, these songs,
Yeah.
like pop culture canon, but they're like kind of ridiculous songs. And so I think what it is like, to people who, I think it's like, well, if you know it's ridiculous, and also 10 million people bought this at some point, well then, like, what is it about it that you could both access, like how they access what's good in it, and also like it's fair to be like, and what's totally fucking ridiculous about it. And I think that's, to me, the purpose of it. But it's like, I also think it's funny that it's like Casey and I, because it's like, who gives a shit? Like, I'm actually a fucking musician who has music on all these places, and I'm like, it's not hard to look at it and see who's won the commercial battle, like Shifty Shell Shock or me, or whoever, Train or me.
Yeah.
So it's not like but I also don't think it's like sour grapes. Like, I don't.
No.
I think it's more than it's totally meant to be fun. And with the Shifty Shell Shock thing, we did that months ago.
Before he died.
Yes, before he passed away. And so, like, we're doing this podcast with iHeartRadio, and at some point they were, like, we bank them, like
Yeah.
we do 4, and then they sit there. And so when it came time to do it, like, I was like, we have to say something. We can't just, like, given the nature of what this is, even though we're not like vicious, you can't just put that up, because even if one person is like, yo, what the fuck's wrong with you guys? Like, this guy died like a month ago. Like, they'd be fair to say
Like
that.
Punching down into the grave.
Yes. And so I will share, we were like, okay, Casey's like, okay, so let's like record something, which I think they forgot to put with the episode. So we said it. Yeah. But I was like, we recorded a thing, and it was like, I don't know, whatever the equivalent would be, like laughing in temple, laughing in church, laughing in school, where you're just like not supposed, something that's not supposed to be funny. It's not funny, but you're trying to be serious about your bullshit joke podcast about music, talking about Butterfly by Crazy Town. And you're like, but I do want to say before we go into this episode, it's like you're dropping to your Ira Glass voice. It's just like complete psychosis. But anyway, to me, it's been a fun, weird wrinkle to talk about some of the things that I feel like you and I have talked about, standing behind like open trailers and tour vans for long stretches of time. But yeah.
Well, I find, I mean, it's a great conversation that the two of you have. And for people that don't know Casey's a comedian, a musician.
So funny, so smart.
He has a parody character, the greatest singer-songwriter of all time, Matthew Davids.
Absolute psycho.
People also might know his brother from the Weekend Update.
Yeah, he's a fairly famous person. Yeah.
Well, funny. The whole thing is like, it's not just him on an island alone and his family that's funny.
That's true. Yeah. Although I do think, no disrespect to Colin. I've met him a handful of times. Very nice guy, but I think Casey's the Pink Album. I'm like, yo, I think Casey's one of the funniest people in the world. Like when he gets going, I just can't. I also think Mike Strandberg is one of the funniest people in the world, though, and I genuinely mean that. Like, I'm like, someone give him some kind of vehicle to just be that guy on a larger platform than the Bowery Ballroom stage playing guitar next to me, or Doug Furr or whatever. Like that guy. Yeah, he needs to be.
What did Strandberg, you, Casey, Jay Miller, all Staten Island natives, right?
All Staten Island people. Yeah, I moved there or Strand's a Brooklyn person. He never lived on Staten Island.
Staten Island. I
mean,
but
like South Brooklyn. The Verrazano Bridge. Yeah. I found Jay and I have known each other forever. I met Jay. He was a college radio DJ at College of Staten Island when I was a high school student and going to punk rock shows. And then Strand came in through Bonds, through my friend. Bonds is hilarious too. Came in through my friend Chris O'Brien, who is maybe he's maybe funnier than all of them when he gets going. But anyway, and Casey, I think for me, came in through Jay. It's like all this weird little web of people, all very funny, all very and all like very of this part of New York City, outer borough weirdos that are like not cool, not from Manhattan, not from the cool parts of Brooklyn, but also not like the people that they're getting made fun of by on Staten Island or in Brooklyn. So they're kind of like you find each other because there's like nowhere else to go. You're not gonna, like the fucking actual like art damaged kids in the Lower East Side were not like interested in us. Nor were like the kids from Jersey Shore interested in us. So you had to find your own little fist of something in the middle. But anyway.
But what I'll say about the podcast, it inspires great conversation. Like where you guys start is nowhere near where you guys finish. You wrap it up nicely, but there's always some musical discussion that like touches on aspects that I would never think of while even uttering the words crazy town in a sentence.
Totally.
Well,
that's good. That's good. I mean, I feel like that's I have no idea if that translates into like people it finding an audience, but I do think that that's not really whatever that happens or it doesn't. But I feel like that is what we kind of hoped it would be, and then this conversations are indicative of that too. To me, it's like a conversation that has like very rigid like markers that are like, it has to go here, it has to go there. Well, that's got a purpose and I understand that. But to me, it's like a lot more, I feel like with music and it's happened in the last half hour with us here, like music is so evocative of so many different, it touches so many different weird, it's a game of operation. And like, like Crazy Town or we did one on the fucking Sopranos theme.
I still have to listen to that
and
one.
I was like, and I genuinely like, it just goes in all these directions about like the context in which things are made. And like, you're listening to that song and you're like, oh, right. This is like post 9 Inch Nails and post like that Leonard Cohen thing where Natural Born Killers showcases that part of Leonard Cohen's career where it's like he's spoken word almost. And it's about like these very dark, I've seen the future and it's murder. Things are going to slide in all directions. Like it's like the Book of Revelation almost. And like, this is the Sopranos theme song. You know what I mean? But you're like, you can sort of hear all this shit in it. You're like, oh, that's why that was there. Because that stuff was actually like popular. Like they were pulling from those things, then like feeding it to like this, oh, we've got this like HBO show that'll let us do weird shit. So why don't we? Anyway, whatever. I don't want to get us lost in a cul-de-sac out by Tony Soprano's house, but that's.
I mean, I kind of do, but not New Jersey.
No, not that, not with those people. No. They're not.
I never thought about that. The Leonard Cohen, influence on that because now,
this moan.
It like is
totally, and like Morphine, those bands too, like the dude with like the baritone sax and the kind of spoken word thing, Nick Cave, all of that, like, you know what I mean, like that kind of like it was like it was a kind of masculine thing in a weird way. Like, I'm a dignified gentleman who's like
Yeah.
talking about the end of the world, and it's like a little sexy, but it's also like dark and like fucked. And
Yeah.
anyway. And
Oh,
now
that's
yeah.
funny with the Nick Cave thing, because he kind of like came into my life because the Red Right Hand was on the Scream soundtrack and in the movie, and I
Was it his version of it?
no, but it was, I believe it was Urge Overkill. Maybe it was.
Wow,
I don't know.
really?
Maybe
I didn't
if it
even know
was,
that. That's cool.
yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, that's another wormhole to go down, is just the influence of TV and movies and music on our lives, because we're the last generation of the soundtrack.
Oh my
After,
God, yeah.
after us, it's like, sure, maybe there's a song in a movie, but we are the last generation of soundtracks.
What? Well, 100%. I remember like Angus, the
Yeah, with
Angus
with
soundtrack.
Jar.
That had Jar, and it had "You Gave Your Love to Me Softly" by
Yeah.
Weezer, and it had the best Jack Names the Planets by Ash. And I remember, like, I don't even remember anything about the movie Angus at all. I remember the kid, but I
Hmm.
remember that soundtrack being like, oh my God, that's like the best Green Day song.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like one of the best Weezer songs. That's those Ash songs. Oh, and maybe it had like "Love Spit Love" on it too, which was
Huh.
like, anyway, yes, and that's for a movie that then there was like all
Nobody
the
remembers that movie.
no, but you're right. So much of that, like I remember, like part of what made like Kevin Smith, like one of the things was like on Clerks, it had like Soul Asylum
And
songs.
Alice in Chains open up.
Alice,
I think they open up the movie with "Got Me Wrong."
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. And
yeah.
then Mallrats had Suzanne, great, one of the
Hmm.
other great Weezer songs, all time
Hmm.
Weezer songs,
We
bringing us
can't
back
talk
to Guns N' Roses too. Yeah, he
can't
sings
talk
about
about
them.
a soundtrack without mentioning either The Crow or Singles, which to me are the two
No,
greatest
totally, totally.
soundtracks. But those were good movies. Like, I mean,
They
not that
were.
Kevin Smiths weren't, but Angus was not.
Different. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Kevin Smith, it's funny. That is like I would be lying if I did not say those first four movies. I spent so much time with those movies, and
Oh
I would
yeah.
be lying if I did not say that I haven't spent much time with them in a while, and that there are aspects of him that seems to have like aged poorly for me.
Sure.
But also, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there was a period of my life where I watched his movies as much as, or if not more than, anybody else's movies. Again, people that were like much cooler or whatever.
Right.
And he has truly exemplified a kind of like creative problem solving, DIY kind of like, and I think that's, I have to keep that in the frame when there's
Hmm.
other things that I'm like, I might like be like, oh my God, dude, stop talking every once in a while, or you know what I mean? But then other times I'm
Yeah.
like, but you know what? He's got like a punk spirit, and he's done it in a very cool way. And anyway, yeah.
And you're one of these people that I look to when I think about, like, look, when you say something, I'm always listening, and you're always speaking intelligently, but you're of the
That's
mind.
generous. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
I meant when you're speaking about things that are worth
That
speaking about.
actually matter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Oh
Not most.
shit.
No, that's okay. That's okay. There's plenty
Okay.
of time where I'm saying something and no one should be listening at all. But
That's
anyway,
true.
yes, please
but
continue.
but he's one of these people that, like, and I think you can agree, it's like we're allowed to have said stupid shit in our past or made stupid art, and then like be like, yeah, I'm not that person anymore. But I recently watched Chasing Amy for the first time in maybe a decade, and that movie hit me in a different way than it did when I was younger.
Hmm.
I don't want to give him too much credit, but there is a lot of credit in that movie for busting down the walls for certain aspects of gay relationships and bi relationships in when nobody was talking about that in the 90s. And
Hmm.
if you go back and watch that, there's definitely some cringe. Obviously there is, because we're 30 years ahead, but I look
Hmm.
at that movie and I remember that movie busted down a lot of doors and people were talking about it. I'm like, there's probably a lot of people that watched that movie that were questioning things going on in their own, internally, that might have actually helped them reach some of those kind of like, oh, this is who I am type.
I think that's a beautiful thought, and I think that's I bet that you're right. I think it was. I definitely can see that. And I think I have heard other people from those communities that have, it's funny that, look, this is a successful thing in the sense that I believe that movie prompted a lot of people to have a range of responses to
Yes.
it. And I think that what I really do think though is I think his intentions were pure. You know what I mean? And I think he was like examining something. I see. It's funny. I also see that like. I think that's a movie that's really so much about like the fragility of the male ego. And the fragility of like male friendships too. And I think that and that to me is a useful thing to poke around at. Like what it's the same thing. It's like I think about this with Kurt Cobain or Elliott Smith or Michael Stipe for me too. These men that were like, I didn't think those dudes were like weak. They had strong wills actually, and they were like whether they were unafraid or not, they were themselves in all of the variety of imperfections that included in very public contexts and in ways that kind of represented, but they weren't macho, but they weren't like fainting like wallflowers either. They were like, there was like a kind of like something that was pretty like I don't know the right like it was an alternative experience of masculinity that was neither about like identifying in a way that was like I mean, Michael Stipe's sexuality was in question, and I've actually read a fascinating thing recently that was like somebody writing about how they wonder if Kurt Cobain had been alive now, whether he would have identified differently, like as a non-binary person, or might have even been somebody who had explored aspects of his gender identity that were like trans related or something, because he wore
a lot of women's clothing,
and also he definitely, part of what was so powerful about him was and again, this is not a criticism of any of people, to wrap up the Chasing Amy thing and bring it into this, people, or connect it all. People live and exist in the time frame in which they live and exist, and they make things in the context in which they live and exist, and that is what it is. Yes, we can look at those things and see the ways they've changed, or we could refine them as we move forward. But to look at someone, it's like, yes, Hemingway used certain language because Hemingway fucking wrote in 1938 or 48 or 52, whatever it was. And yes, you can see that and be like, oh wow, that's like kind of fucked, some of it. But also it's like, well, that's where they were and when they were.
Sure.
But with that stuff, I think about like there was definitely something about the way Nirvana incorporated this, like that music was like masculine in the sense that it was like adrenalized and loud, and he's screaming and it's aggressive, but also like there's a real clear femininity in it as well that was really different to like any of the other grunge bands or
far different.
Yeah, they were definitely like, it's funny, as I age, their music and their moment gets like weirder and cooler to me every year, because I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I get how it happened, because Nevermind is like perfectly executed children's songs played on 10. Like, it's completely understandable why that shit became like enormously successful.
But look at In Utero.
And also, I'm almost like, wow, he Trojan horsed super weird stuff into a very like acceptable. Smells Like Teen Spirit can be played at a football game, absolutely, but the people that made it were for sure on some other shit, and by the time
they would not be caught dead at a football game either.
No, that's the great weird irony of it, you know. But anyway, that whole time frame, I think that we were coming to like adolescence into early adulthood, in you and I, our ages being I am grateful that there were these examples in popular culture, even something as messy as potentially Chasing Amy might be to some people. And obviously Kurt Cobain was a fucking mess. And obviously like all of these people were messy, but they were Sinead O'Connor was a fucking mess, but she was like someone cracked open that person was almost like, there was like almost like it was uncomfortable to look at her for too long because she was just like, I'm not going to be the one that stops staring back, motherfucker.
No.
You know, it was like, and the truth was in there, even if it was like messy and sometimes got her in trouble. And I think like that was a real, to have those people around when you were coming into consciousness was like fucking important, I think.
At the same time, it's like one like zeitgeist moment
Yes.
going forward. I mean, going back to Kurt, you know, I watched some interviews over the last couple of years that like I just kind of go down the real deep YouTube rabbit hole where I realized like how much of a feminist he was, and you know the things that he was a very warm, caring person. And you know, I didn't know that when I was a kid because we saw what the media or MTV wanted us to see from him. It would be 60-second clips of interviews or whatever. And I didn't know, you know, what was going on up here. Same with Sinead or, you know, Elliott. Like, there's no way to know, but you go back and you watch, you know, lyrics as, by the way, we're 51 minutes in, and we haven't even talked about your music.
Which is fine. I mean, that's.
But as a lyricist yourself, you know, they get veiled. It's about something that maybe sounds like, to me, it's about this, but to another person, it's this. And it's the same with Elliott or Sinead or Kurt. But there was deep down inside, all those people, like, as messed up as they were very caring, forward-thinking people.
Yeah, totally. And sensitive.
Yes.
And I mean that Axl Rose was sensitive too. But I think that sometimes there's a kind of sensitivity that and trauma and damage or whatever that manifests itself as like I get to bleed this all over everybody else. And then there's a kind that maybe does that for a while and then is eventually like, but it's not everybody else's fault that you know what I mean? And my primary thing I wish for Kurt Cobain and Elliott Smith and a bunch of other people, but they were my primaries with this, is like, I just wish they'd been able to I wish they'd been able to age into a different experience of their feelings, because they were both thoughtful, intelligent, sensitive. What I really think connects the three, and I think Elliott was the least like social justice. He was a little bit more of a philosopher. Than those two were.
A little aloof politically, but
I think he knew what was right and wrong, but I think he was a little bit more interested in like sort of like proxies and thought experiments and whatever. And I think Sinead was a little bit more like, of the three of them, she was the one that was like, I think they all had a shared sense of justice.
Yeah.
And I think that hers manifested as like, how dare you look away? You know, look
she was
at
the Molotov cocktail.
Yeah. And I think with Kurt, it was more like, it's funny. I think he understood that there was actually something about being, even if he was white trash, even if he was a runt, even if he was whatever, he also knew he was like a white guy in America with blonde hair and blue eyes. And as downtrodden as he might have been in various parts of his life, he understood that it was worse for other people.
Everybody almost.
Yes. And I think that I genuinely think, like, I was reading something the other day where someone was like, that concert where they bring Bikini Kill with them to Brazil or something, and everybody like fucking yells shit at them and calls them like cunts and whatever. And he like goes out and just throws the show. 50,000, whatever it is, like people that are there to see Nirvana, and he's like playing Come As You Are, and he's going, hey, like he's not singing the words. And like and then like they started and stopped Smells Like Teen Spirit 4 times. They never played it. And when asked about it, it was like, well, they were mean to our friends, so fuck them. Yeah. And I'm like, there are people who are like, that's so unprofessional, those people. And that might be true, but there's something else to me that's like, yeah, but that's also a way to like speak truth to power in some way, and to be like, yeah, all right, well, here's another thing you could do. Come to the show and not fucking yell slurs at 4 women on stage because you're waiting for the rock band to come or whatever. Yeah.
And as much as they did not embrace their entire community of fellow bands, they still embraced the community at large. And it's like, yeah, these are our neighbors, we, and we're bringing them with us. Like, they were fiercely always, and all three of them were always fierce about, like, we love this band,
Oh
we love this
yeah.
band, we love this band. So if they brought those bands out on stage, it's like,
Well, I think that, and that indicates with each of the, with Nirvana, it indicates who they thought their community was.
that's true.
They didn't think their community was just because those bands were all getting big at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, I think they were all into Soundgarden, but I think
Everybody was.
yeah, but they were like big brothers a little bit. But I think.
Yeah.
I think that they didn't feel a sense of kinship with those other bands aesthetically. And
No.
of course, I wish they'd grown up about that too, but they were 25 years old. Like, that
Yeah.
shit matters the
We're
most
all
it's
assholes
ever
at
gonna matter.
25.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think with Elliott, it was a sweet story. I got the opportunity to do this, like,
By the way, congratulations on that.
oh, it was beautiful. Thank you. I mean, thank you. It was beautiful. And it was like it was this thing where he started a studio before he passed away. New Monkey Studios in Van Nuys in California. They wanted to do a fundraiser. Studios have been hit hard by the home recording shift over time. Also by everyone in music making less money, so less of us can use studios as often as we used to. And studios like that, like everything, it's always the middle class and down that gets fucked first. And so studios like the one he started are in a lot of trouble. So it was going to be it was going to be his 55th birthday, and it was like 20 years since the studio started, 20 something years. So they did a benefit show, and they got the band that was his band on the Figure 8 tour back together. And then a bunch of us stood up and played 3 or 5 songs a piece as Elliott for the night.
So
it was
cool.
amazing. And also, I promise you, it also laid bare how hard it is for people to be Elliott. Those songs are really fucking tricky songs. But one of the things the reason I was bringing that up was about what you said. A cool story that was told at it was Granddaddy played, and that was the last full tour I think Elliott Smith did in America was on Figure 8, and he brought them as the support.
Oh, wow.
And every night they would play, I think they would come out during Elliott's encore and do Don't Fear the Reaper together.
That's so weird.
Which is so weird. But he would come out every night during Granddaddy's set and sing the high harmony on the first song on the Software Slump. Don't Give Up 2000 Man. That first song. He's simple, he's dumb, he's the pilot, I think it's called. It's like an epic 11-minute song. And when they played it at this thing, Jason from the band was like, yeah, it might be weird for us to not play, one of our songs in our little set is not going to be an Elliott song, but it's because, he really liked this song and he would always come out and sing it. And I think, one of the things that's important for me to say out loud is it was a genuine thrill that this person liked our band.
Yeah.
And by coming out every night on stage before his set, the big headliner coming out on stage and singing with us, it also stamped us to the audience hey, I like these guys, you should listen to them too. And I think that speaks to what you're saying. And I'm just thinking of Sinead bringing all kinds of fucking random Rastafari people with her out and being this is great, this is whatever. And, yeah. But
I mean, as a diehard Pearl Jam fan, that's one of the things I've always appreciated about them. And as they've grown older, they've been more vocal about we're taking this band on tour. I saw them on tour with Slater Kinney in Canada in 2005, and Eddie would come out and sing a song with them. They'd come out at the end and that camaraderie.
No, he's great. He's great.
Yeah. Well,
He's
you
great.
had a really nice interaction with him.
Well,
played
that's not even what I
Ohana
mean.
Fest.
That sounds. I don't know him at all. I would
No,
not
but
claim to. We had
I've had
one.
my experiences with him too, and he is great.
You've probably had more than I have, and I'm sure I just think it's funny. Even Kurt in all his 26-year-old judgmental, or I feel like he was. I'm just gonna make an insane analogy. It's like Malcolm X. Malcolm X gets to the point right where he's And then I went to Mecca and I prayed next to blonde haired and blue eyed Muslims. And I realized it's not about race. It's about, and then Malcolm X is about to get into socialism. And that's when they were
Yeah.
like, kill this motherfucker. Like, that cannot happen.
Yeah.
But with Kurt, I feel like he was by in utero. He's like, there's that interview where he's like smoking the cigarette and he's like, no, I really like Eddie. Like, you could tell
Yeah.
he's sincere. He's like,
Yeah, he just
he's
doesn't
a
like their
really nice
music.
person. I don't like his band, but I think he's a really sincere, really, like, you could tell he means it.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
also understands, like, this guy's one of the only people alive that totally understands what I'm going through.
Right, because
You know?
they both became these figureheads for a city, a scene, and the
Yeah.
music industry. And there's that beautiful clip of the two of them at the VMAs
Oh, yeah.
dancing and
It's
under
sweet.
the stage.
You could tell
Yeah.
it's meant, and but that there's I think I genuinely do think that Eddie Vedder is like very sincere about all
Yeah.
that stuff. And no, my only interaction, just for the sake of telling it, was he has a festival called the Ohana Festival, which you're aware of, in Southern California, Dana Point, Doheny,
Yeah.
so whatever it is, and I was lucky enough to get to play it one year. It was one of those random ass things where like it comes in, the booking agent's like, hey, you want to go play? And I was like, really? Like, there's been so many of those things. They always feel like a miniature insurrection. I'm like, yeah. And then I also am like, I'm aware, like, we did Coachella. I'm like, that'll never happen again. But it's
Nope.
crazy that it happened once. Like, how the fuck did that even happen once? But anyway, so I did it. And it was really funny. I finished my set with Brother's Blood, the song of mine, and then right after, it was daytime on the beach. It was like 1 p.m. And then when my set was over, all of a sudden you see like all these scattered ass people like center up in front of the stage next door. And I realized, like, I hear this voice and I'm like, oh, I've been hearing that voice since I was 12. That's Eddie
Yeah.
Vedder. And he's like, beautiful day outside. And, I thought this would be a nice song to play. And then he plays Here Comes the Sun on a ukulele. And everybody's like, and so Ellis, the guy that books my band, he was next to me and he's like, well, at least you can guarantee that he saw Brother's Blood. Because he was like standing on the side stage
Hell
getting
yeah.
ready to play. So anyway, finish the set, finish the day. I'm going to go to leave. And it's the little backstage, like, trailers area, and I'm going to grab my stuff, and he's there. He's like with Tim Robbins, the actor,
course.
and some other person, and they're talking. And I'm like, I'm not like this. I'm typically like, oh, I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
that because I'm not gonna. What am I gonna do? But I was with somebody, and they were like, just go. You
Yeah.
gotta go. And so I did. I like walk over and I'm like, wait a second. And I'm like, Eddie, I just wanted to say, I'm Kevin. I played. And he's like, oh, I know. He said something like, yeah, I mean, I helped put this thing together. Like laughed, like I'm aware.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And, it's beautiful. And I've definitely been a fan, since I'm a kid. And he was like, oh, it's so great. And he's like, yeah, it kind of definitely beats like beer and piss-soaked rock clubs, right? Like a day at the beach. And he was like, I'm sorry it was such an early show. I know like some people still are like, it's Friday, they're not off work yet. And I was like, dude, I don't care at all. Like, it's amazing. And we're like laughing. And then we're just bullshitting. Where are you from? Whatever. And then all of a sudden, like this person comes over. It's like a handler of some sort.
Yeah.
And he's like, Eddie, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we need you to come over and take a photo with Tim and this tattered American flag. and Eddie looked, I swear, he like looked at me and he went, I guess I gotta go do that. And I was like, I guess you do. Yeah. And then he hugged me. And while we were hugging, he went, see you on the other side, brother. And I remember thinking, like, does he mean like when I die? Like, am I going to see Eddie Vedder when I die? But it was so worth it. Like, so nice. If I saw him right now, I'm 98% sure he would have no idea who the fuck I was, but maybe not. I don't know. But yeah.
I disagree with that because me and Scott went up to Montreal and Ottawa to see them in 05. We were staying down the block from them, so we met Eddie after the show, hung out for
That's
like 40,
cool.
Yeah, 45 minutes, had a cigarette with him, talked about Gus Van Zant's Last Days, which I've only seen once and I did not like. He hadn't seen it at the time. Flash forward to 2006 when the Avocado album comes out and they do a free show at Irving Plaza. He sees me and Scott, says, you, I saw the movie.
Shut
didn't
up.
think it was that bad. I am not lying to you. Scott will verify the story
Oh, I believe. No,
100%.
I believe you. I believe you. That's
But
insane.
he remembered this conversation we had about the movie, and it was wild.
That's
And
cool. That's
yeah,
cool.
so
Sincere.
he might remember
I'm
you.
also like, God, it's wild to think of him watching that movie.
Right,
So
right.
weird.
That is weird. Because right, he lived in the parallel to that at the same time in the city.
I know. I know.
Um, do you
Man,
have 5 minutes?
yeah, I have 5 minutes.
Okay,
Definitely. Yeah.
cool. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
No, no, no. You go because I'd rather reuse it the way that my man wants to use it.
Well, I wanted to at least promote the certain things that you've got going on. Like
Oh, I didn't
I
even
want.
think about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
well, this podcast exists to have an open conversation with whoever I'm having on, or just my version of, I don't have a therapist right now, so I'm going to talk to this guy at microphone.
That's a valid use of the medium as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also want to be able to let people know, because I've talked about you on the podcast before, about your music, about how
Well,
your
thank you.
your kind words about sobriety that helped me.
Mm.
So it's my way to give back and be like, well,
Oh,
you
thank you.
yeah,
That's cool.
you just got off playing some shows with Sunny Day, which I wish I was here, but I was in Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah,
Um,
right, right. That's a
yeah,
cool place to be. I like Pittsburgh a lot,
yeah, Pittsburgh's
actually.
great. And if you didn't know, there's about 30 comic book stores within the city limits.
I did not know that. I
It's
don't think I've ever been
crazy.
to a comic book store in Pittsburgh. I'd have to rack my brain. I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, we had a cool. It's been a weird year where like
Hmm.
it to try to I'll try to be encapsulate about this like in a relatively short form. Like I'm 44 and I've been doing this now I've been in bands for 30 years, but I mean like that's, but I've been doing it. I started like leaving New York to do it when I was probably
Yeah,
18, and I started like doing that all the time when I was like in my early 20s, and I've been making a living now at it for 20 years. In the time that that's happened, I've been mostly an independent musician that's ranged between like some infrastructure, small independent, medium-sized independent labels, to like pretty close to DIY with
yeah,
some infrastructural support. And like, there's been times that have felt very successful. There have been times that have felt much harder. The reality in like post-pandemic world, as the music industry continues to kind of like crumble into for people like me, is fascinating. There's definitely those winds. The weather feels like it moves really quickly between the wins and the losses, and it is not like I would say to any aspiring independent artist, in lieu of like TikTok virality or having your song in the fucking being used as like the credit sequence in a new Apple TV show or something.
right.
It's not the most financially viable path in all ways, and I do feel like there's moments where I'm like, am I like in the most precarious place I've ever been as an adult? And other times I'm like, no, that's not the case at all. It moves all over. That being
Mhm.
said, this year started with me being a little bit like, oh, it might be like a real like take stock moment, and we'll see what the next not because of I feel like I can do more than I ever could. I feel like so invested in and capable about performing and writing and recording and all the rest of it, but it's just opportunity and age and
Yeah,
context and environment. But then this year we did these like the Bubblegum Bulldozer 10-year thing in February in New York. In March, we did this Make the Clocks Move 20th thing in the West Coast that actually was like really great. And then
yeah. No.
April, I did the first round of these like undertow, non-traditional shows in the upper Northeast that were like legitimately, what's the word, like reinvigorating. Those were
Yeah.
so cool. And then in May, I did a week with this band Motherfolk that I just met last year that I really loved touring with, and those shows were great. June, I went back to Australia for the first time in 10 years.
Hell
That
yeah.
was great. And then August, did this like, I played with Guided by Voices, Sunny Day Real Estate, and did that Elliott Smith thing. And now September's something corporate, some house shows and a thing out in
Mhm.
the West Coast. October's a full band tour with the band Balance and Composure, totally different
Yeah.
world, younger kids, big shows. And then like, there's little bits and pieces filling in for the end of the year, and I'm like, oh, weirdly it's turned into like, I got a call from the guy that books my shows and has for 16 years in May, and he said, Well, I just wanted to say, somehow, against all odds and better judgment, you're actually having a really good year. And so I think that's true. It's worked out, and we'll see what next year means. I could be like fucking, I don't know, trying to be. I'm also going to be like teaching little kids at Edie's school music this year. Like I could
That's
be doing
awesome.
more of that, but for now, I'm going to keep doing this thing. We have the Patreon that continues to be this vibrant, vital thing, and so I'll keep showing up as long as some amount of people keep showing up too. I guess.
So the Patreon, which you sprung up with it, in like the beginning of the pandemic, which
It was like the first week. Yeah.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
1st of April we went up. Yeah. First couple weeks. Yeah.
And obviously it was something, that I jumped right on because it's like I
Well,
don't give a
thank
shit
you.
what, like, even if you were just going on and you were like, oh yeah, you were just singing, which you did
Which
multiple
sometimes we
times.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes
or
we
if
do
you
that.
were, like reciting Slobodan Milosevic text, I
I
would have
will be
still.
doing that because I do think he's a great teacher. Sorry.
But
I'm changing. I'm
but
just letting this. I'm changing
I
my
mentioned
blinds.
Slobodan Milosevic, and Kevin just literally dove out the window.
Yeah, no, I had to change the blind situation in the living room.
Um,
Okay, but sorry. Yes.
but the Patreon includes a live show every month, and a lot of it evolved and it keeps evolving into song sketchbook ideas and
Yes.
covers and all
Yes.
this stuff. But the thing is, you know that you've always had this kind of like very tight knit following at the core of who you are as a musician, and it expands obviously with something like Bad Books, or when you're doing tours with Jesse, or Brand New or Manchester. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this, like, I hope that you recognize your pivot to this Patreon um, home base is like one of the smartest, most brilliant things that I've ever watched anybody do with a music career.
Well, that's extraordinarily generous of you. I think what I think is I do know that I know that our core audience, and not everybody in your core audience can do a monthly subscription thing,
Sure.
and some people come in and out, and some people came in for a length of time and then left. And I also recognize that, like, I actually really love being prompted to learn 2 covers a month and figure out a cool way to record them. It's made me a better home recording person. It's made me I think it's actually made me a better amateur arranger in like MIDI. It's made me fuck with a drum machine more.
Yeah.
It's made me like learn some things that have actually informed making the last record, making the last EP that was attached to that record. It's prompted me to write 12 or 13 songs that I'm sure are going to be in the pool for the next record, which I still am figuring out what the hell I'm doing with that. But
Hmm.
but I do think I know that our core audience and the core of that core audience that can afford and is interested in being connected in this way is like a really what I lack in millions of people, I do not lack in fervency of care from the people
Yes.
who are there, and will and commitment, and I think it matters to the people to whom it matters a lot. And I think that's I will never, and it's not it's impossible to talk this way and not have it sound like bullshit. So I don't know how to say it. So I'll just say, I don't think I'll ever really know how to say the right thing about that because
Hmm.
it's like incredibly meaningful and fortunate,
Sure.
and not to be taken for granted. I think the Patreon has changed. I do think it was a fortuitous thing for us to do at the time we did it. I think that there was 2 years where it was kind of wild how successful it was, even from a like in context to scale, like commercial, financial way. I do think that has like come back to earth a little bit as the world
Hmm.
has changed, but it has actually stayed steadier for longer than I definitely could have ever thought. And I know so many people, peers of mine, who started them in the same general time frame, and it like sort of never reached the peak, or even if it did, it kind of like cratered fast.
Yeah.
And I do know like we've had real relative sort of staying power with it, and I kind of think like that's why for me, like as long as there may be a tipping point where it's like if it gets to a certain place, maybe it's not as worth the amount of investment I've put into it
Yes.
month over month since April of 2020. But I don't see it going like away for forever, and I hope it doesn't, because fuck the money part of it. That is useful and necessary. We live in the material world, all the rest of it. But it's really been good for me in a variety of other ways. Yeah. And I also think for like I just think I think it's encouraged me to strengthen some muscles that maybe weren't always strengthened just by touring, playing live, making records in studios, however big or small. And I think that that's been extraordinarily useful to me. And I also think it's like one of the coolest things about it is every, January, the conversation with Zach about like, what do we want to do different come April? And like these subtle things we keep, things we bring back, things we amend. And I think my hope is that that's kept it interesting enough for the people who've been there for the whole time. And we don't bring in as many new people as we were in May of 2021, but sure. I think that was to be expected to some degree, and I still think it'll go down, whether I'm doing this for the rest of my career or it goes away in 5 years. It'll go down as like a very seriously fruitful, worthwhile. It's also become this amazing archival space for us. I think we've recorded what is it? 60 something months. We've definitely recorded somewhere in the vicinity of like 120 songs at this point.
Yeah, like 50 covers.
Yeah. Written songs, original. Reimagined old songs. So I think, and the live stream thing, my favorite thing about it that I still haven't gotten very good at is like, you guys all talk to each other, and I actually can't, not because you shouldn't do that anyway when you're trying, but so it gets, if I read something, it like gets in my head, and then I'm like, no, you have to actually be like doing the thing. But I love that community around it. That's like a cool, very cool thing too.
Oh no, it's amazing, and I without me thinking about it subconsciously, you're watching you do what you do with your audience, even before the Patreon, but the care, the memory, the always, like looking people in the eye and be like, yeah, how you doing, Steve, or whoever it is. To me, that's a model for what I do. I remember, and I do have to look at the chat while I'm selling books because I have to see who's buying what. But at the same time, it's like watching you do it for a year and a half. And then I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm going to do something like this in a different lane.
That's just so great.
And I waited for the other shoe to drop. And that was my YouTube anniversary is 3 years next week. Wow. I've been on YouTube.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's wild.
The business just keeps, I just moved to a new house because my business is getting bigger and I need more space.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Nice thing to have. Nice problem to have. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's a testament to treating people right, treating myself right, and looking at the big picture of like, how can I take the cult of Dave, like the cult of Kevin, and like give people a place to hang out.
Well, that's the thing, and maybe this will be a natural point for now till we do part 2 to park this particular plane. You nailed it, and it's what it is we were on one of those tours with Brand New and Manchester Orchestra, and it was the last time I think the three of us played together. It was the
2015.
Yeah, and we played the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, and during, and it was a really special show, and during one of the bands, I want to say it was Brand New, our bassist for that tour, Jay Russo, we did a bunch of touring together. We played on Instigator in 2015 and 16 in specific. We did a lot of stuff together. He turned to me, and he's a lifer, been in bands since the 90s, and he turned and he was like, I just figured it out. And I was like, what? He's like, it has nothing to do with us. It's totally only about them. Meaning, like, he was watching the audience watch one of the other bands engage with, you know, and so when you talk about the cult of Dave or the cult of Kevin, and you talk about, there's these three particular like sets of information that I think, for better and for worse, but I'm going to say at core, I think it's ultimately for better. Ultimately, more, whether it's 5149 or 98.2, I don't know. But for me, I think the first thing is like, I was raised by, you know, and there's different versions of these tribes. Mine was these like Irish Catholic, outer borough, working class people that like they were proud, and they were proud of me, but they also were quick to be like, they saw through the bullshit, and they didn't invest in the bullshit, you know? And then that sort of gave way through people like Kurt Cobain and whatever. You get into actual punk music, actual underground music, and then you're starting to play these shows, these places where it's like the band plays, then the band goes in the back and cooks pasta to serve to the touring band. Your distro arm is like the people that live in your house with you. Like, and literally the stage is at eye level with the audience, and the audience and the stage and the performers are almost interchangeable. In fact, often are. And then the last part is, I would say, whatever happens in the experience of attempting to get sober, or at least in my particular one, was a lot about like you know, ego. Sorry, I think this is my cue. Reckoning with ego and reckoning with self-centeredness, both self-centered fear and also self-aggrandizing. And I think that those three things taken together and imperfectly practiced, I don't remember everybody's name. I wish I could. There are times I look at people and I'm so sure, I know I talked to them and I can't remember their names. There's other times I can look at somebody and remember their name but not remember what we talked about. There's other but that's just a numbers thing. There's a degree to which like you're not going to retain all of that shit as one person. It's not possible. But the intent, and I'm also, what I've learned is like, yeah, humility is not like humiliating. It's actually just realizing like, even in the center of, even when you are the cult of Dave, the cult of Kevin, even when you are at the center, you're not the center. No. Like the thing about that Patreon is like, it's a lot more fun, I would imagine, for the people watching on the live stream to be talking to one another while watching it than it would be to just be sitting there numb, like silently staring at their phone while I sing songs in the ether. And like, that indicates that, yes, I may be like a prompt to gather people, but the gathering is also 50% of what's going on there, at least, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think that for better and for worse, that triangle of influence from upbringing to the beginnings of punk, the kinds of celebrities I was even drawn to were like celebrities that were like anti-celebrities in some ways. And then the experience of, I mean, I will just say this, like, I started trying to get sober literally the same month I got signed to Capitol Records. Oof. And if those two if I really think that if I had not been, and I didn't get sober for another 3 years after that, but I started trying, if that was not a feature of my experience as I was continuing to fumble through a career in music and figure out how to like, I think I would have been pretty royally fucked, because it's really easy to get lost in your own nonsense and story. And so it's touching to me that is ever seen. And I'm grateful that I've always loved talking to you every single place we have, including today. And I know I will the next time too, whether it's here or standing in some room somewhere. So
Yeah, and I want to say thank you, and to anybody listening. Links will be in the description for Kevin's socials, the Patreon, the other podcast, that not this one, but
Yeah,
give it a
yeah,
chance,
yeah.
and also how to become a teenage jihadist, and
Please, first and foremost.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's end the recording. But I would love to do this again at
Yeah.
some point.
I'm down. I'm sorry it's taken me. It's just life, but
Yeah, no,
we will. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I would love to do it again too.
I really hope you enjoyed that. I know it was a little bit all over the place and you probably didn't learn too much about Kevin, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. If you enjoyed listening to the two of us talk, that's all the enjoyment that I really care that anybody's getting out of this in general. You can find Kevin's Patreon link and the link to his podcast with Casey in the description below. They are the podcast is called Give It a Chance. You can find it on every major streaming platform, and his Patreon is just under Kevin Devine. If you are going to be in his touring range this summer or this fall, he's going to be playing with Something Corporate in September, and he is opening a bunch of shows for Balance and Composure. I may try and go to one or two of them, but if not, you can always guarantee you'll see me at any of his solo shows in Seattle or Portland. Come say hi if I don't know you. And once before we get going, I just want to say I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the podcast if you're brand new. Some of the stuff may not be of your interest on this podcast, but if you enjoy just listening to somebody kind of sharing their problems, their solutions, I just kind of let this be my open journal. And if you're into comics, you should check out my YouTube channel, West Coast Avengers. Please rate the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to, because that helps push it out to new users and new subscribers. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. Bring it to you.